go? There she is. Okay. So I just wanted to let you know, I do have online coaching courses. I have just a private course or a private coaching. I have a book online that's just in a Kindle form. I have a YouTube channel. I do the support group. I am just wanting to make myself available for anyone who's going through this transition at whatever level feels like a fit for you. So I'm not going to give you any hard sales, but I do have some awesome products from any level, from whatever it is you feel is a fit for you. And that's all the plug I'm going to give you. We got that out of the way.
I'll give a plug. Can I give a plug for you?
Sure.
I was lucky enough to have the very first Mormon that I told about my faith, tornado, earthquake, whatever, was Wendi. And the work that she did and the coaching I did with her made my transition so much easier. So that's what I'll say. So
yeah, I think it's been tumultuous for both of us, but we're learning a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I usually have this coaching call for people who are on the groups, but sometimes when I read a book like this and something that has a key piece to our learning and growth, I just get excited and I just open it up for the whole group. So hopefully when other people come on, I can look up there and admit them. So what I'm going to do is present about 20 minutes of the content. I encourage you to go read his book. It's a little over 3 hours. It might be a 4-hour audio read. It's a great read. I had to sit down. I was glad I wasn't driving because I had so many awesome notes that I wanted to take. So I'm going to give about 20 minutes of the content, and then I'm going to open it up for discussion, because what I find so valuable is our ability to express how we're seeing the content, because I think, 6 minds are better than 1, and we really get to have it integrated. So write down any questions as we go along, or any insights that you have, because I love to draw from you and help.
I'm struggling.
More help in this. Okay.
oh yeah.
I have to mute some people if I hear noise. Okay, so I have a PowerPoint that I wanted to share with you. Tell me if you can see this. It should be up now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Good. Okay. Now, if I can get it to the beginning. Okay, the 5 attachments by Don. He is a Don, so both his dad and him are a Don. Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. And he asked the question in there, and at first I didn't quite understand it, but as he goes through these 5 attachment styles, or at 5 levels of attachment, then you kind of understand it. Is knowledge controlling you, or are you controlling the knowledge? It's a great question. So this is Toltec wisdom that he got from his grandma, and of course some of it from his dad. I love Don Miguel Ruiz Sr.'s books. Some of those books are the 4 Agreements, The Mastery of Love. I think he has like 2 more than that. But he starts with this story of his 3-year-old daughter, and when she wanted to leave, or when they were living in Arizona and they were going to move to California. And this 3-year-old daughter loved their house that they were living in Arizona. And this 3-year-old daughter loved the little preschool that she was going to. And so she was so worried that they were going to move, and she was crying and she was beside herself. And she was just like, I don't want to leave my house. I don't want to leave my school. And so that shows right there a level of attachment. Whatever we say it's mine, then we've attached to it somewhere. And so she was just crying and beside herself. Finally, when they did follow through with the movement, and she started in a whole new preschool, and they had a great house in California, she was fine. And what I thought was so relatable to the church is that we're so attached to everything that is familiar to us. We're attached to the doctrines, the community, the security that it gives us. We are so familiar with it all that we can't imagine our life outside of that. And so we start to panic and we get a little bit nervous and we're upset and we're like, I don't want to leave my church. I don't want to leave my people. I don't want to leave my religion. I don't want to leave my whatever, fill in the blank. And so that main thing is we don't know what the future holds for us. And so that panic sets in. And we tend to look for another stability, another structure that we can lean into, because the structure that the church promised us is so black and white and so firm. And it's really not duplicatable. But because we liked that stability, we search for it again, when in reality, we know that we're healing. We know that we're expanding our ability to express ourselves and create in this world when our beliefs become fluid, and that we're able to challenge them, and we're able to look at them with logic and reason and say, you know what, this no longer serves me, and I'm going to upgrade, or what you feel is an upgrade, to a different belief that feels more congruent with what it is I feel inside. So I thought that was a great story. He also, what I love about this is that he relates it to soccer. So I'm going to do the same thing. Like I said, go ahead and read his book. But he relates it to soccer because it's not so emotional. It's not, religion is emotional, politics are emotional, but those are certainly things that we get attached to. I'm supposed to show off to my YouTube channel. Please, I don't know how to do that. Okay. So the problem is that we aren't aware of these attachment styles. And so once we become aware of the map that we are on, then we can see where we fit along the map and know where we're going, where we've been, and kind of where we fall within the spectrum of our own growth and development. So I see this as a tool. It's not a new gospel. It's just a tool to help us understand where we are. So he talks about level 1, and that is the authentic self. The authentic self, and if you relate it to soccer, it takes no sides. So imagine you're going to go to a soccer game and you're not really emotionally invested in either team. And so, even into the sport of soccer. So you go in there and you're going to become an observer. You have no emotional attachment. So there's no judgment and no conditions. And you get to watch the game for the very first time. And so you begin observing the rules and wondering kind of what happens and what are the guidelines of the game. But you're just watching and you're just observing and you're not emotionally attached. So he talks about this being your authentic self, that your authentic self doesn't have anything imprinted on it yet. It's not conditioned in any way, that it's your original self without the dogma and all of the filters and all of the trauma that has kind of been layered on top of us, that authentic self never really goes anywhere, but it can be hidden deep down inside of us. And I would say the number one word that I have used more often to describe myself after leaving the church is that I'm just far more authentic. I get to be me. I get to express myself the way that I feel, and be me, wear what I want to wear, look like I want to look, say what I want to say, drink what I want to drink, and just be who I really want to be. So the level 2, he calls preference. And preference means that you do choose a side. So you're going to the soccer game and maybe your grandson is on the red team. And so you're kind of a little bit emotionally attached to it. You're hoping the red team wins. And you begin to be emotionally involved and rooting for one team or the other. But you're not going to be hurt if your side loses. You're not going to be hurt if someone doesn't agree with your point of view. You're not going to be hurt if your team doesn't win. So you're also not hurt. Well, I guess that all kind of coincides together. So in preference, it means you know that if you say yes to something, that you're starting to create it. And if you say no to something, that you've stopped that possibility for creation. But you're doing it all consciously. You're not doing it unconsciously. You're actually choosing where you want to put your focus, what you want to think, and what you feel about things. And this takes a high level of self-awareness so that you are an observer of your own mind at the same time. So, but you're picking a preference, like, well, I like blue. Whereas when you're in your authentic self, you don't really like it, or you like all the colors the same. And now we move into preferences, like I really love purple. I really like this perfume or that perfume, or I like this style of house, or I like this philosophy, or like, but you're not emotionally invested. So the next one level is level 3, what he calls identity. Identity means it's your team, it's your color. You are emotionally invested. You're excited, elated when your team wins. You're attached to the outcome so much that it begins to affect your mood and your attitude. Let me move this, and even your self-worth. You're a fan. Maybe at this point you've bought the little finger, the number 1 finger, and maybe you have a shirt that has your team color on it. You're associating with their flag becomes your flag, and their colors become your colors, and their motto starts to become your color or motto. And you start to make choices and sacrifices around this team and around this idea and around its players. Now, in my opinion, if I look about where the church comes in, first of all, when we're introduced to it, we might have a preference. We're like, I like Mormons, I like Christian, I like Mormon, the Christian flavor of, or Mormon flavor of Christian. I like Buddhism, I like this philosophy and this spiritual route or whatever. But I'm not emotionally attached if something else comes in that I map onto that feels better for me. Whereas level 3 identity is that you're starting to buy in that, yes, there is a prophet that will lead and guide us in the church. Yes, there is scriptures that we need to listen to and follow so that we can achieve some level or status in the next life. And you're starting to buy into the story more, and it's becoming more a part of you, and you're identifying with it. Another thing that we work with after we leave the church is reclaiming our own identity. So I'm talking about if a convert has an experience with, say, a missionary, the missionary's goal is to help them identify with the church. Now, if you're born into it, like me, my identity was submerged into it at birth. I didn't ever choose to identify with the church. It was infused into my atmosphere and my environment, into my language, the choices my parents were already making were all attached to our belief about the church. But if you're just entering in, the initial doctrines are created to help you identify with the one true path. And unfortunately, we enter in when we're in things that we're very emotionally worried about, like we're worried about having a community, or we're worried about what happened to our loved one, or we're going through a divorce, or our life is not going in a very good way, and we're looking for relief, and we're looking for that stability. And then the church finds where your weakness is and promises you stability in that area, and then you start identifying with it. And so that's just how it goes. We can call that manipulation and sinister and insidious or whatever. But this is actually how everything goes in the world. It's advertising, it's politics, it's even how we communicate with each other. We try to get other people to identify with our point of view. And so it just is. We can be angry at it, or we can just look at it and say, this is how our mind operates, and this is how a human being tends to attach onto things, because we're social creatures, and that seems to be our highest form that we get to offer, that elevates us as more conscious beings than all the other animals in the animal kingdom, is our highly adaptable ability to socialize. And so this identity is an important piece of that socialization. But then it gets to be a little bit toxic, and that's when we move into internalization. And so this means the idea, concept, team, whatever it is we're attaching to, is an intense part of your identity. It affects your self-worth. So when the team loses, you lose, and you feel that a grieving, the loss of the game. Everyone else outside of that is your enemy. they're against you. So you're starting to feel the othering and the divisiveness. When your team or religion is praised, you feel praised. So when the world says something amazing about President Nelson, all the Mormon population is like, oh, that's me too. They're saying that about me because I believe that. Also, when it's attacked, and this is what happens when we're outside of the church and we observe this behavior, when it's attacked, the people feel like you attacked them personally because they've internalized the information and they internalized the belief and the whole religion and theology. And so it feels like a literal attack on them. And we don't understand why we can't penetrate that with logic and reason. It's because they're too internalized with the belief. And I don't know about you, but for me, I was definitely in an internalization. And I would defend the church at all costs. So at an internalization level, you have a set of clear rules about what it means to be a fan and what it means to be a member. And so then we start policing each other, and our faith is kind of revealed by what we wear, what we drink, how we talk. Another person that wants to join in. So that's when we have to we understand the clear set of rules. We know what the 13 articles of faith are. Next is anyone who doesn't like your team, your belief, or your religion is wrong. And you're the one with the truth because you're so identified with it. You prefer the companies of those who agree with you because, again, it solidifies that belief inside of you and says, I'm right. And we want to be right. We all want to be in the right path. So there's more to this internalization. Let me change to the next. Somehow. Internalization continued. So it has become an important part of your existence. Otherwise, you are arranging your day around this. You're starting to, get season tickets. You've invested in the Super Bowl. You're headed to, that you're not going to schedule anything else around Super Bowl time and make sure you have front row seats. And you're just really excited about it. You're going to general conference. It's not a question. We don't plan anything on that weekend because we need to listen to the prophet. So at this level, you also try to recruit others. You're so excited about what your belief is that it's the only way, the one and only true way, that you start recruiting others and to try to get them to identify with it. You weigh, I put weight, must have been thinking about my weight. You weigh, you measure, compete, and compare according to this religion and idea. And so now every choice that you're making is kind of going through the filter of belief at that point. So if someone, you hear somebody say, I hope the Lakers win, and you're a Raiders fan, you're like, okay, I feel threatened now. This is not good. So you're making all life choices according to the rhythm and demands of the team. We in the church made all our life choices according to the rhythm and demand of the prophet and our routines and the things that we knew. So that's level of internalization. That right there feels pretty radical, but it gets worse. And that's fanaticism. That's this fifth level of attachment. So at fanaticism, we must defend it at all costs, even if it's not even rational or logical. You have to defend it at all costs. All others are frauds. Their wins are your wins. Their losses are your losses. Everything outside your beliefs are a conspiracy because there's no legitimate way that you could have lost or that you could be wrong. Your blood bleeds their colors. You are committed 365 days of the year. Your family must agree or they are traitors and they are out. And unfortunately, a lot of us, when we leave the church, this is what we experience. We get ousted from the family dynamics, or in Jehovah's Witness, they literally are shunned and they expect to be shunned, and it's woven into their theology that you're supposed to shun, and that's what Jehovah expects. That's called overt shunning. In the LDS church, we covertly shun. Otherwise, we say, we're not shunning you. We love you. You're welcome back anytime. But they're also doing this covert shunning. And I don't know what's worse, to be gaslighted that you're being shunned, not being shunned, or to know and expect that you're going to be shunned. Now, any interesting pieces in Jehovah's Witnesses, I know it's stark for your family to be completely cut off, but I'll be honest, I think it's easier once you overcome that stark severance, that you're able to start moving on. And it's expected. They know once they say, I'm no longer a believer, they expect that to happen. And so it's a choice that they make before they reveal their true, where they stand with the church. In the LDS church, we tend to think that, oh, maybe our family will understand. Hopefully they'll understand. And then we try to continue family relationships. And because of the entanglement and the enmeshment, the lack of boundaries and the poorly established emotional skills, we tend to be a lot more enmeshed, and it takes a lot longer. So your family must agree or they're traitors. You don't waste time with people outside the team or the belief system because they just don't matter. I remember teaching gospel doctrine once and asked, what's it going to feel like, on the day when the Lord comes again and there's still going to be so many dead people? And the cutest, sweetest man that I absolutely admired and adored, he said, but those people didn't live the gospel and they didn't qualify for the kingdom. And I'm like, do you understand what you're saying? You're telling me they don't matter, that there are going to be dead people all in the street, your neighbor and this person and that person, and because they don't subscribe, they're going to be dead. And it was almost like it didn't matter. I thought that was weird. So fanaticism continued. The team or the belief is even more important. Let me move us over here. More important than their own life. That means we sacrifice and put the needs of the team before our own needs. And we are definitely taught that in the church, that is a symbol, that our level of sacrifice is a symbol of our faith and our dedication to our God. The next one is, it's without question, it's unchallengeable. So when somebody comes to you with reasonable reasons why you need to challenge your faith, it's almost like there is an insulated wall of belief where it's unchallengeable. Morality can even go out the window in order to protect the team, the church, and the beliefs. That means we will lie for the Lord. We will manipulate. We will do whatever we need to do to maintain the image of the church. And this is something that you'll see if you are a woman trying to get relief from being abused, or a child who is trying to express that I'm being abused by a church leader. And because it would look bad to the church, or if it's someone higher up in the church, we need to protect whoever felt inspired to call them, it gets swept under the carpet. And so we're living in an environment that looks like we're all shiny on the outside, but the underbelly of the religion is very toxic because of this idea that we're so fanatically attached that morality just goes out the window, and we can't see how we're marginalizing people. We can't see how it hurts. Like, it's completely invisible. The belief is even more important than God. I thought this was interesting, that it doesn't matter what those impressions are inside your heart, or who you think God is. Their flavor of God is the most important to adhere to. They cannot see any fallibility. It's irrational, and it's unpenetratable with logic and reason. And so we understand that when we approach our family members who are believing, and we have just things that we would like them to consider, that they're at this level of fanaticism. They're at this level of fanaticism. Hold on, let me see if I can. Stop there we go. We stopped that. Back to my screen. We can do this. So at that level of fanaticism, their mind and their mental state is so attached to the doctrines and attached to it being true that they cannot see how they're not being rational. For me, I will completely confess, I was a fanatic, definitely a fanatic level. My hair was on fire about the church, and I'll tell you, when I kind of chased that cat down the road, I understood where. And that was the moment that I was breastfeeding my first child. So I was like 20, 21, and I'm sitting there nursing her and looking in her eyes, and I'm falling in this deep, deep love with her. And it's like the doctrine stacked up on me and said, if you don't toe the line, you could risk losing her in the next life. If she chooses a different path outside of yours, then you're going to be severed in the next life. And that was not okay for me. And so that's when I dug my heels in. I mean, the gospel, the church was like, you know, I was on the periphery going, oh, that's interesting. I was identifying with it, but I hadn't become fanatical about it until I was afraid of losing my children. And so there are woven teachings in the doctrine and promises that we are given, promises that are unknowable, unprovable, that we get, that we become so attached to, that we become attached to the whole theology. So, sorry, I got emotional there, but I was thinking about how much I love my daughter and how much at that moment, I abandoned myself. I abandoned my authentic self. My authentic self says, this is a beautiful moment. I have such an awesome time to sit here and nourish my child in this most amazing body that is made to help her live and exist. And we just have had these experiences together. And I love this life that I'm having. And instead of having an opinion about everything, I wasn't just observing it and enjoying it. I was getting super attached to the doctrine because I was worried about my children's safety and losing them. So some of the things, I don't know why it doesn't. I wanted to look up the definition of fanaticism and kind of the etymology of it. And it means, some of the definitions say that it's an insane person, a zealous person infected with excessive enthusiasm, relating to a temple, which I thought was interesting, later used to refer to pious individuals who thought that they were inspired by a god or a goddess. It means to be stuck in a superstitious frenzy, like the word fantasy, meaning shaded through appearance, opinion, and sometimes even delusion. Can you guys relate to this? I was fanatically attached to the church. So one of the quotes that came to my mind, some of these are my quotes and some of these are his quotes, but these are the things that came into my mind as I was listening to what he was expressing. When we resist hearing rational challenges to our structure of beliefs, we deceive ourselves by calling it faith, when in reality, it is that we're fanatically attached to our beliefs. I've called that faith, a faithful daughter of God. That means I'm not going to deviate, when in reality, I'm attached to the belief. Next one is the wise one looks for the truth in all the angles, not just in their own beliefs and experience. A wise one knows that they are not immune to their bias. You understand your mind enough to know that it's biased. You don't say, I have no bias. You say, yeah, my mind is figured in a way that I am not immune to my bias. The next thing, and this one is Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. quote, or close to what he quoted. And remember, I did the audio, so I tried to write it down the best I could. One with self-confidence is willing to challenge their beliefs. If you're so sure you're right, it isn't self-confidence, it's arrogance and stubbornness. Self-confidence is confidence in who you are, not confidence in what you know. I love that because we become attached to knowledge. So let me go back to that first quote. Are you controlling knowledge, or are you allowing knowledge to control you? Knowledge is challengeable. It's just knowledge. And what to use a church term, we're going line upon line, precept upon precept. So to me, if that's true, knowledge is power unless you're attached to it, and then it can disempower you. So becoming that fluid person where new ideas can penetrate your existing belief system, that's an enlightened person. That doesn't mean you've arrived. It means you're willing to challenge your current beliefs. And then I think that's it.
Wendy, can you go back to that, what he said, a wise one looks for the truth at all angles. One with self-confidence is willing to challenge their beliefs. And then what was next? It was something about if you're so sure you're right, you're ignorant, or that's arrogance.
The wise, well, let's see. The wise one looks for the truth at all angles, not just their own beliefs and experiences. A wise one knows that they are not immune to their own bias.
And then what was the one after that?
One with self-confidence is willing
That's
to
it.
challenge. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a screenshot of these and I'll post them on the Facebook page.
Oh, that would be awesome. Okay, that'd be great, because these are great.
Helpful. Now, again, these are just the little snippets. I couldn't read you the whole book and do the whole thing.
Oh, I'm gonna read the book.
It is awesome. It really is. He did really great work here. So what I wanted to throw out to you is the question, what else do we get fanatical about? And before I ask that question, what I realized about this book is he's not discrediting my religion. So I'm not attacked, don't feel attacked. I'm not trying to defend it. We're observing behavior and we're observing what humans tend to do. And this is ancient Toltec wisdom. You know, this is stuff that he learned from his grandma and that had been passed on. And so when we can observe it, we're more inclined, when we're inclined to watch for the patterns, we aren't so defensive about what's happened to us. We just fell within the pattern unaware of how we were being programmed. And so the more tools that we have to understand how the mind operates, the less likely that we're going to be manipulated into another program. And we can observe our own attachments and we can see, you know, this is an unhealthy attachment because I'm othering other people. I'm starting to recognize that I'm feeling incongruent with my ability to love and accept others. And your inability to love and accept others and other ways of thinking is really an incongruence with yourself. Because when you are coming from that authentic self, that unconditioned and unprogrammed self, you realize that we're all just in this with all of our programs, with all of our trauma, with some of us with more skills than others, and that we've all brushed up against some system that we've become attached to, not even knowing that we're attached to it. So now that we understand these levels of attachment, now we have a tool to say, you know, what does it feel like to just kind of decompress off of that attachment and consider something else? Now, he went, actually, let's go to the question. I have more for you, but I want to hear your insights first. So if you have something you want to share, just put your hand up and I'll unmute you. This is the awkward part, like in gospel doctrine, when you ask a question, allow it to be awkward.
Yeah, can you actually ask the question again?
Yeah, what are some other things that we can get fanatical about, or even if that question is not the one you wanted to express, or anything that you wanted to share, if you have an insight, or when I was sharing this content, what was coming to you. So it doesn't even have to be in line with the specific question I asked. Yes, Stephanie, you're already unmuted.
You know, I think I have got a son right now who is highly right-wing. And I was sitting in that space as a member of the church. But a year and a half ago when my brain broke, and it was like I was able to live in that space because the social issues of the church didn't bother me, because I was so ingrained to the gospel that I just, in my mind, said, it doesn't matter if this is God's church and this is his living mouthpiece and this is what he's proclaimed, then this is what I'm on board with. And that made it okay to other others, or to be against gay marriage or whatever the situation was, because I firmly 100% from the depth of my soul thought this was true. And when I found out it wasn't true, which was the most painful thing of all, that I dedicated my whole life to since I was 18, it was like everything broke and I saw the entire world different. And I saw other people for the first time. And my oldest son, who's 36, he still lives in that space. The boy that I raised to live in that space. And he gets in these fights with me because he just really feels strong about gay people. He has some real wrong. Even when I lived in that space, I really had a heart. He says things that are, I realize now listening to you that I have been my brain has been breaking away from the gospel for years before it happened. Little things like you said, othering, were on the fifth Sunday, you know how they come in and talk about other things in Sunday school. Some brother got up and talked about people it was when they changed kind of their language, that it's okay to feel gay or to be gay, but it's not okay to act on those feelings. Do you guys remember that? And and this one guy raised his hand, he's an old guy, and he goes, he started using words like us and them. And I don't know what made me do it. And I raised my hand. I said, wait a minute. You can't say that. There might be somebody sitting next to you. Heck, it might be me. You can't do that. And I don't know what made me do that. But I think politics goes with religion, because you think you're on a side.
Mm-hmm.
You think you've picked the side. And so it's all entangled in religion, I think right now. Like I have a flag that's on, not a flag, but in Arizona, my husband's retired military, and there's a license plate you can get that has a flag background. And so we picked it because he's retired. Well, I'm embarrassed because I think they might think I'm a Trumper because I have a flag back there. And I don't know who hijacked the flag, but it makes me feel, because I see people so much as humans now, and I don't want to give out that impression. So
yeah, I hear what you're saying. So one of the things we can get fanatical about is our political orientation, like whether we're a right wing or whether we're left wing,
or very left wing.
Same with getting a vaccine, same with wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm.
We're having all of these attachments like right in our face. It's almost like collectively we're being asked to challenge our attachments and to choose humanity over our attachments, because we're having all these opportunities to attach onto so many things right now. And so it's collectively we're getting challenged. And I think the internet has a lot to do with that. When you were talking, I wanted to remind you of a book that's really good, Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. And the book is called The Righteous Mind. That book is very profound. The research in that is amazing. We also get attached to our country and our flag and our, we get defensive. All other countries would be our frauds, or other countries are
right.
It's America. We can get attached to our ethnicity. We can get attached to anything that we're not willing to let go of. We can get attached in our relationships. Like a person will come up to you and let you know their feelings, and their feelings aren't what you want them to feel. And we're attached to them being the person we need them to be. And now, they're revealing their truth, and you're like, I was attached to the person I wanted you to be. Right. And so observing all those attachments becomes a very profound tool for our own enlightenment and our own empowerment. I know when you were also talking, for me, it was almost like I was conditioned to believe that the problems in the church have to do with the people being just these mortal beings. So I was never considered challenging the system being an immoral system. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how the church benefits from you being fanatically attached to it. And the church does not teach you to become your authentic self. It cannot survive. That's how you know you're in a poor system. The LDS church could not survive if the people became their authentic self. They are completely dependent on you identifying with the theology, internalizing it deep down inside. That's why when you're a missionary, you're at identity level. You're not going to give them all the truths until you're solidly identified with the church. Then we're going to do a little bit of internalization, because you're going to learn about polygamy eventually. You're going to learn about our racism eventually. And so the church, I think about your authentic self. There are no churches, there are no races, there are even if we're at the level of preference, it means we just get to move in the direction of our preference and our wants and our desires, and we get to create in that place, but we're not so emotionally attached that we become unhinged if things fall apart. So the preference is an important piece too, because if we stay in our authentic self and just not care about anything, then we're not going to be really powerful creators. We're just going to be freaking awesome observers. And so at some level, we have to accept that we're having a preference. I like purple. I have to decide what color that I'm going to paint my house. And if, I have no preference, then I don't care. I'm not going to be motivated to do it. And so, but that preference can be a conscious thing. Otherwise, I know I'm picking this blue and it has hues of purple. And maybe some people won't like it. Maybe somebody will, but I like it because of this. And it's okay that I like it. I don't have to judge myself because I have a preference. So again, when we start to get identified with things, that's when it gets a little shady. If you're conscious about identifying with things, that's one thing. But if you're completely unconscious that you're mapping onto something, or you bump into a system that depends on your attachment, that's when things get ugly. And most of us are not trained in this. Most of us did not learn the Toltec wisdom from our grandma. And so we're going around getting attached to all kinds of things. And we don't know how to challenge them, because we feel like we're going to lose our stability. We feel like our foundations are going to crumble. And so that's just some of the thoughts that I had with that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Can I jump in? I don't know if you saw my hand or not, but I'll just start talking.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a teacher, and I feel like sometimes this sort of thing is used on teachers, like you should be willing to sacrifice anything for your students. And I know you're not here for the money. I'm like, yes, I am actually. I do need to provide for my family. I'm a breadwinner. And yes, I want to make a difference, but I'm not going to bleed out on the altar of education. I'm going to go home when my contract time's end, and you're going to shame me for that. And it's really hard. I just got out of the school I was in. I have a new principal. I'm so excited because she would use those tactics. And I think it was very triggering for me, because it was like I was right back. It was like when I sat across from her for my performance review, I felt like I was sitting across from a bishop a little bit, and it was really difficult because she used a lot of the same tactics. So anyway.
So when you see them, you're less likely to fall into them. Like you're watching them, you're observing.
Yeah.
Them, like, yeah.
I'm still new, and so it's like a new muscle for me. It's like it feels like having to hold back a dam to me, because it's like I'm learning how to be like, okay, just because she says that doesn't mean that's how I have to do it. But it takes so much effort for me not to get washed away in the messages that she's sending, and like to stand firm. So I mean, I'm practicing and I'm getting better, but I'm really hopeful that I'll have a healthier principal in my new school.
Well, that reminds me, in his book, he talks about how the stage levels 3, 4, 5, it has a lot to do with needing external approval. That someone who's their authentic self is drawing approval from within. And in the church, being raised in the church, I was taught to draw approval from my parents, to draw approval from my leaders, and from the system where, I'm the Laurel president now, or I am the gospel doctrine teacher, or, we pretend like we're supposed to be humble about those callings, but we all have an ego. So we're kind of like, yeah, no, I'm the gospel doctrine teacher. The Lord has seen me fit to be amazing. So it's kind of that ego feed. And if you look at it, the whole system of the church is ego food. It trains a very unhealthy ego. Even in the temple, we are covenanted to be kings and queens, priests and priestesses. Who are our subjects? We're already positioning ourselves in some level of othering whoever is beneath us. And so it's just feeding that ego that then you're a king and a queen unto the Most High, and you're going to be the right side of God. All of these promises feed our ego and cause us to be attached to some external source. And so this becoming self-aware and your authentic self, then you're not dependent on the approval. I know in the church, I just thought, man, every time I go to get dressed, oh, my cleavage might be showing a little bit. This might be a little too suggestive, but there's part of me that was like right on the edge because I want him to feel sexy because I am a sexual being. But yet, it's also like, but I also want my tribe to think, oh, she's following a line. I love that she can just weave through that line of expressing her sexuality and staying wholesome all at the same time. And that was just it's a crazy line to try and toe. Anyone else? Thank you for that, Lauren.
I have a question, Wendi. I obviously need to read the book, but I'm wondering, does the author talk about going from one area, for example, fanaticism, back to like the authentic self or preference, which seems a little healthier,
Yes.
Does he talk about the transition at all, or is that just something we need to apply,
I didn't think I would have time to cover that in this. We have 9 minutes, so I'll do like the really short version, because what I was going to do is do a part 2 for next week. But let's talk about that since you brought it up, because that was my question after you showed me. I'm like, well, how do I deconstruct from all this? So from fanaticism to internalization. So you identify yourself with being fanatical, and you're wanting to at least go to the level 4 of internalization would be better than being a fanatic, right? So his main thing that he says there is to allow the self-inquiry. I have written, I even have it here. This is the book that actually I wrote that led me out of the church, the Healing Questions Guide. Because in this guide, I teach you how to ask questions that bypass the ego mind and engage with your higher self in order to heal the body. And so after I wrote that book, then I realized the contempt that I have developed against my own self has to do with my original doctrines that I was fed as a child. And so the reason I go to that is when we start to ask those, the practice self-inquiry and challenging ourselves with the questions. And for every one of you who are out at some point who did that, maybe you weren't conscious of it, but you started to ask questions that were not resonating with your authentic self. And you allowed those questions to sit a while and start moving. To the 5 stages of transition, you have the fear, or first you have the doubt. And that's why doubt is such an important piece of our development. So when Uchtdorf comes out and says, doubt your doubts, not your faith. I'm like, no, doubt your doubts. Your doubts are important. And so first we doubt, then we're afraid of what might happen if it's true. Then we become emotional because of what's happened to us, and we become aware of things. We're not sure how to process it all. So we become angry and we're going through grief. Number 4 is we start to learn about ourselves and gain the skills. And then number 5 is that self-actualization, becoming self-aware and accepting yourself for who you are, even your warts and all, and still holding yourself in high regard, but not holding yourself to some unattainable person. So number 1, allow yourself to doubt and to ask the questions. Will help you move from fanaticism to internalization. from moving from internalization to identity, I love what he had here is forgiveness. And to look in the mirror, even has an activity, and say to yourself, I forgive me that I've been believing something that creates contempt against myself. I forgive me that I've been using my belief to project judgment and contempt against others. Powerful. I have used my religion as an excuse to go against my own intuition and my own conscience and my own self-development. I am worthy. I love this. I am worthy of my own love. I'm not going to allow any ideology or narration or belief system pull me away from my true authentic self. So forgiveness helps you move from internalization to identity. And the next one, moving from identity to preference, the notes that I had here is to understand why you make the choices that you do. Otherwise, you become the observer of your mind, rather than making those choices unconsciously. Recognize your masks that you wear. Recognize your labels. Identity is where we start saying, I'm a mom, I'm a Mormon, I'm a woman, I'm a life coach, I'm an insurance salesman, and start removing those labels and see those as something that you do, not something that you are, and realize that you're always at choice. See, in church, we're not taught that we're always at choice. We're told we have free agency. But if you choose against our theology, then you are in the grips of the devil. So is that really a choice? So assign the meaning that you have placed on things. Recognize how you're assigning the meaning you've placed on things. So this is really a lot of observation of the matrix of your mind, and make the effort to interrupt your unconscious patterns. The main thing here that I got is to recognize your intentions. Why do you do the things you do? You do it out of shame. Do you do it out of anger? Do you do it out of fear? If you do, you're not coming from your authentic self. And then moving from preference to your authentic self, you said be aware that your choices always make you responsible for the outcome. So you understand that you are co-creating. And you gain the ability to detach from any moment and reframe it. And to move in and out of your preferences, like you toggle in between preference and identity, but you're doing it consciously. You're creating consciously.
Oops, you're stuck.
What's that? Otherwise you're stuck? Oh, I'm stuck. Give my computer. So being able to talk, am I stuck again?
Mm-mm.
Okay, is developing that ability to toggle in and out of identity and self authenticity, being your authentic self, and moving out of that consciously and aware that I'm identifying with this, but I want to play this game for a while and see what happens. But I'm doing it consciously, and I take full responsibility for the outcome. And then the last one he talks about, that authentic self, is really a temporary state. So expecting us to be in our state of authentic self all the time is not reasonable, because we're here on this planet to create and grow. And so we're going to have preferences at some point, but to be aware of those preferences. We are initiating our potential in the direction that we choose.
You're stuck again.
So am I unstuck now? What's going on with my connection? What I had here is that you're the one initiating your potential in the direction that you choose. And the last thing I had on there is the answer to who am I is the great mystery. You're not trying to define it all the time. That I just am. I am that I am. I create whatever I want. And this, to me, in a lot of my coaching, I explain this, is that if we're all here with the same potential, we're all here with the same worth and value. And then the only thing that's stopping us is that the only question we really have to ask, what do I want? what do I want? Which seems like a simple question, but when you ask, especially an LDS woman, what do you want? I just want whatever the Lord wants. I just want whatever the church wants for me. They don't have any wants because they've been taught to shove them down and not want what they want, or what they want is not appropriate. And so that coming to that place of what do you want to create? What lights you up? What brings you joy? What brings you happiness? And move in that direction. And we have been taught that sacrifice is on the higher rung of our virtues and our benevolence than pursuing what's in our heart. That to me is an insidious program. So that's my opinion. I'm not too attached to it. So
Amen.
Challenge me.
Perfect.
Okay. There's much more, and I will still.
Oh, there's a hand.
Oh, where do we go? Is that Rex? Go ahead, Rex.
Yeah, I had kind of a question as far as I haven't read the book. I've read several of the other books, but in this one, does it seem like that there's like, it almost seems like that there's an ideal attachment level, or is it more of, you know, these are kind of some different levels of attachment, and this is the value of this level of attachment. This is the drawback of this level of attachment. And are you liking how you're attached, and do you decide to attach that way, or if you want to shift, or is it more if there's an ideal way and do that?
Well, what the feeling that I got with the book is that he's not trying to get you attached to his idea. He is throwing ideas out there and almost trying, and this is what I try to do in my coaching is trying to help you with what feels right in alignment with you, and to go from inward. So I guess there is an ideal, and that is knowing your authentic self. When we don't know our authentic self and we're not coming from that place, but then we're still in the haze and we're still in some unconscious creation, not understanding how we create. So I think the tool is to understand how to use the attachments. And that what I got was when you're attached at level 4 and 5, you're in danger zone, because then you start to become really unconscious about what you're doing. You're othering, you're separating yourself, your ego is becoming gigantic and your heart's becoming tiny. And so that was my field. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. It seems like it's a little bit nuanced as far as, you know, what to do with it exactly. It kind of seems like that 5, when I saw your description of the 5, it doesn't seem like there's really a valid reason to be at number 5. If you're there, you're probably not in a good spot, is kind of what I got. And then, like you said, if you're just number 1, then you're not really in a space where you have a preference or create something or have a desire or have something that you're willing to stand up for and create. So it kind of sounds like those are kind of the ends of the spectrum, and maybe something more in the middle might be more reasonable.
Well, so what I see it as, my daily meditation practice is using the muscle. I like when Lauren, you said it's a muscle, because that's how I describe it too, is that using your muscle to come into that place and feel your authentic self. And when I do that, and then I start creating preferences for my day, then I'm going in the direction of I'm beating to the drum, my own tune, my own drummer. And then when you're coming from that place, if I stay in my authentic self all day, I'm not going to get anything done. I have to make a preference at one point. And when I get identified with something, and I'm really passionate about the coaching that I do, I think I'm identified with it. It's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So my preference is coaching. Now it's identified with people specifically who are working with faith transition. So it's more like a tool that I want to be able to consciously toggle in between the places at a level where I'm choosing at all times. I am at choice. Does that help? And so, yeah, it's not that I want to be in that level 1. It's that I want to go to level 1 to start. And
well, it sounds like you want to connect with the level 1 and then maybe move into the other so you can move into creation, because it sounds like from what you're saying that it's difficult to move into creation if you're just being your authentic self as the observer and no preference.
Yeah, the minute you say a yes or a no to something, you're making a preference. And so that's why he says being in that authentic self is not ideal to be there all day, but knowing that it's there, knowing that's where you originate, is far healthier than being so identified and so fanatically attached to an ideal that you lose yourself. You lose your identity. And you don't even know who you are because you're so mapped onto the needs and wants of the system or the team or the political agenda or the need to wear your mask or to be a Mormon or whatever else.
Hi.
Yeah, so I'm actually a flight instructor for pilots, and I can tell you there is no shortage of ego and no shortage of right ways to fly an airplane, even though they may not, be actually the tool that they need for that type of flight or that type of activity. So I definitely understand the challenges of approaching somebody with ego and people who want to be right.
Yeah, that need to be right is actually one of our greatest enemies, is because that need to be right supersedes the possibilities of there being any different way. Then we don't grow. This is my belief. I don't know if it's true, but that's what I map onto right now and prefer to believe. Notice my language here. And that is that we are here with one prime directive, and that is to grow, 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 grow. Just to grow and to observe. And I couldn't stop growing if I tried. Even if I sat in my room and did nothing, I'm still thinking and growing and saying, well, okay, I don't really like that. I'm still growing. So we can't grow if, like you said, if we have only one way that you can fly a plane. There's only one way to get to Jesus. There's only one way to believe. And so it limits us. Thank you for that. Anything else before we close up? You guys are awesome. Thanks for showing up. And I'm going to create on the feed that I already have. I'll go ahead and put some of my slide quotes on there if you want them. Good.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.